Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate your time and your interest in electric vehicles. I'm Ursula Hogben. My colleague Anne Charlotte is here, and we also welcome Anton from the Good Car Company. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd just like to acknowledge, particularly in NAIDOC Week, I'm hosting the meeting from Aboriginal land of the Cammeraygal people of the Eora Nation. Pay respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the pivotal role that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders continue to play in our Australian community. We're here tonight to discuss electric vehicles. We are Zero Emissions Sydney North. We're volunteers. We're also hearing from Anton, sustainability expert, co-founder of the Good Car Company. We're particularly discussing electric vehicles that don't cost the earth. So we're going to be discussing electric vehicles, but we're also particularly discussing our bulk buy. Now, just introduce Anton briefly, and then we'll hear from him shortly. So Anton is the co-founder and director of Good Car Company. As well as an electric vehicle enthusiast, Anton's a project manager and sustainability expert. For the past 15 years, he's been delivering international solar PV projects and residential and commercial energy efficiency projects. Previously worked for recognised NGOs, Renew Sustainable Living, Tasmania, and he's a director of Good Life Permaculture. And Anton's driving passion is working with people to adopt low emissions lifestyles. So why are we here? Electric vehicles. They're the future. They're starting to come to Australia. People have got lots of questions and are really interested in affordable options as well as the brand new options. Matt King, our Energy and Environment Minister, says this is the best car I've ever driven. The running costs are virtually zero, it's great value for money, and it's good fun to drive. So welcome. Tonight, between 6 and 7, including time for Q&A, we're going to touch briefly on who we are, why people would switch to an electric vehicle, how electric vehicles actually work, how we charge our electric vehicles, including home and out and about, which is a really crucial question for a lot of people. What EVs are available in Australia. And then we'll go to Anton, who's our guest EV expert. He's going to be particularly talking about sustainability, affordable EVs, and how and why we would participate in an EV bulk buy. Lots of time for questions. And then I'll end by 7 just with a couple of other things that we can do to accelerate our transition to zero emissions. You're very welcome to leave at 7 if you need to. You're also very welcome to stay on a bit longer. Anton was great at our last session, staying on and answering further questions, so do feel free. Okay, Zero Emissions Sydney North. If people haven't heard of us, we're a volunteer group. We're focused on practical ways to help reduce emissions. So there's a whole lot of information available online, and we're all kind of aware of it. But what we particularly wanted to do and are doing is look at what are the main sources of emissions and what are the main solutions. So people that want to look at the big picture things can look at those first. We are one of the zero carbon communities of Beyond Zero Emissions, which is a national group. There's over 100 of us now, and we're all focused on kind of practical things that we can do in our community. You might have heard of Beyond Zero Emissions Byron or Hepburn or in the Bowral area. There's quite a few rural groups, and we're really proud to be one of the inner city groups. One thing that we're trying to do is really help people have a sense of community and common goals and achievement towards reducing our emissions. So we're particularly focused on Northern Beaches and North Shore. We're working with Mossman Council, Northern Beaches Council, and starting to liaise with other councils in the area as well, including Hornsby, Hunters Hill, North Sydney, We're doing what's our mission or vision is we can all be part of a sustainable community for ourselves and for future generations. And how are we helping to achieve that? By swift practical action on the main sources of emissions. If you have a look at the graph, you'll see on the pie chart, the main source of emissions in our area is actually electricity. And that's because so much of our electricity comes from fossil fuels. And we will touch on that at the end in terms of a couple of things we can all do to reduce any of our emissions that are coming from electricity. But then beyond electricity, 30% of it's from our transport. So that's obviously a pretty big chunk of emissions. And there's also that issue that as so many of us are trying to move away from fossil fuels, it just feels really incongruous to be filling your car up with petrol. So there's philosophical, environmental and cost reasons that people are interested in EVs. So we're working with local government. We've also got programs for business, community groups, schools and individuals. We're also now doing a regular stall at Mossman Markets. That's once a month, and looking at doing another one in the Northern Beaches. So please look out for us and let us know if you're interested. And last of all, at the end, I'll touch on solar and renewable. We have a couple of business relationships. They pay thank you payments. That funds our work in terms of practical things like flyers and printouts. But more importantly, it's funding our community fund. So one of the things Zero Emissions is doing is collecting for doing a solar install on a local charity. And we hope to keep doing these. So do one, save up, do another, do another. And we've actually got our first one worked out. We did a site visit. We're really looking forward to telling people about that soon, because basically everyone that's part of Zero Emissions Sydney North is then part of helping put solar on these charities. 25 years plus of clean energy, significantly lower power bills, and significantly more money towards their cause, which is great. So why switch to an electric vehicle? First up, who's actually got one? Put your hand up if you've got an EV. I know a couple of people mentioned having one. Yep. And who's test driven an EV? Has everyone had a test drive? Or, yep. Have you felt that amazing acceleration where it's almost seamless acceleration? That's quite incredible. So why switch to an electric vehicle? One really main reason is financial benefits. So apart from the initial price, once you actually own an EV, they're significantly cheaper to run than a traditional car. So looking at average driving, average Australian drives about 15,000 kilometres a year. Petrol's costing them a couple of $1,000s a year, and we know that's increasing. An EV is costing around $600 to charge to do that same driving, or it's even less if you've got rooftop solar. I've spoken to some people who basically only charge at home. Once they've got solar panels on their roof, they're effectively charging for free. There's also no petrol station anxiety because you can charge from any power point. Also, an EV's got significantly less moving parts. Doesn't have an internal combustion engine, doesn't have spark plugs, oil filters. There's far less to go wrong, but there's far less maintenance time and less maintenance cost. And that's adding up to potentially a few thousand a year as well. And then some friend who's particularly financial noted a third financial point, which is that currently EVs are depreciating far less than petrol cars. So when he factored in lack of depreciation, he said he was, thousands of dollars a year ahead from his EV rather than petrol car. What about the environment? So across Australia, if we all switched to active and electric transport, We'd eliminate 6% of greenhouse gas emissions just from that one change. There's also another major issue with exhaust pollution. It's actually a major health issue. So it's causing about 1,700 deaths each year in Australia. And health costs of exhaust pollution are estimated at around 3.3 billion in Australia, which is just extraordinary. So switching to an EV or any form of electric transport and active transport is giving us all a significantly cleaner, quieter community. Dr. Kim Lu, who's quite well known as a co-chair of Doctors for the Environment, loves her Nissan Leaf. She points out that Australian cars have got high polluting fuels, and this increases heart attacks, strokes, lung cancer, among other things. She particularly chose an electric vehicle, Nissan Leaf, for pollution-free driving. And she says, I've got rooftop solar and a battery. My car runs on the sun, it's free energy. So she used to spend about $2,000 a year on petrol alone, plus her electricity costs. And now she's spending about $750 a year, and that's her house and her car running costs combined. So significant savings, and then obviously loving that it's zero emissions. Does anyone have any questions so far? If you have questions as we go, we do have time for questions at the end, but also please feel free to pop them into the chat, because we're going to collate all the questions from the chat, as well as have time to ask questions yourself. So how do EVs work? As you probably know, traditional cars have got an internal combustion engine. They're running on petrol or diesel, it's stored in a fuel tank, and then it's burnt in the engine to produce power. But this is also producing exhaust fumes. So electric vehicles have an engine that's powered by electricity. Electricity is stored in a battery, and the battery can be recharged from any electrical supply. Often that charging is from a renewable energy source, and plus, once the car's in motion, there's no exhaust fumes. If you think of the congestion in cities, around schools, etc., it's just wonderful to think that there's just no exhaust fumes coming out. You might have heard people mention hybrid, plug-in hybrid. So a traditional hybrid has a battery plus an internal combustion engine plus a fuel tank. And the battery is recharged by the engine. Excuse me. An example of that's the Toyota Prius, quite well known. Plug-in hybrids are actually somewhat well known in Australia, including, for example, the Mitsubishi Outlander. So a plug-in hybrid has a battery and an engine and a fuel tank. It's powered by the battery first, and then the engine is the backup. The internal combustion engine is the backup if the battery runs out. So this car has both a battery and an internal combustion engine in it. Way of the future is just the pure battery electric vehicle, BEV or EV. So electric only, no internal combustion engine, no fuel tank. It's exclusively powered by the energy stored in the battery. Jay Asper, dentist and a member of Australian Parents for Climate Action, loves his Hyundai Ioniq. He particularly loves his EV because of the performance. He says, I love the instant torque, the fast acceleration, the zero emissions. He also loves the low maintenance and costs. So he says, I charge at home using my solar, so that's free. And then I use low cost charging options when I'm out and about. I spend less than 1/6 of my past petrol costs. But I think talking to Jay, a lot of it is about the performance as well. So how do I charge my EV? Where? How long is it going to take? When? And what happens when I'm out and about? These are all really common questions. So an EV is fully electric. Never need to visit a petrol station again. Among EV owners, and this is around the world as well as in Australia, 80% of charging is done at home. So you simply plug your EV into your power point, or you can get a home charging station for faster charging. It's kind of like coming home and plugging your phone in. And if you charge overnight, generally speaking, you're going to wake up with a full battery in the morning. So we often talk a lot about how long it takes to charge. But as an EV owner, people just plug it in and wake up to a full battery. PlugShare's map shows us all the charging stations around Australia, and there's an increasing number, which is absolutely fantastic. But there's already 2,300 public charging stations, and over 50 of them are fast charging stations. And good news for anyone that lives in or near Mossman or comes through Mossman, we're getting an ultra fast charger soon, which I'll explain in a moment, but that's some really fast charging. So public chargers Australia-wide, shows you where they are. It's the PlugShare map, and EV owners download the PlugShare app and have access to all of that information. Great information, including what type of charger, what speed, and things like that. So how long does it take to charge an EV? It depends on the type of charger you've got and how big your engine is, how big the battery is, among other things. But broadly speaking, charging at home on what's called level 1 charger give you kind of 7.5 to 15 kilometres an hour. So that's looking at least an overnight charge. Or you can buy a relatively inexpensive home wall charger, and that'll get you up to, say, up to 50 kilometres an hour. So you can top yourself up or get a full charge overnight. Out and about, there's level 2 or level 3. Level 2, you're looking at 40 to 120 kilometres an hour. Level 3, you're looking at really fast. So an ultra fast charger will give you 70 kilometres in 10 minutes. So some of this is to fill your car up. Other times it's just to fill your battery up, put a certain charge on your battery and then head on to your next destination. But those ultra fast chargers are particularly exciting to think that you're getting a full charge in maybe 30 minutes. Why did Gail buy her EV? So Gail's got school-age children and they bought it to be their second car. Most of their driving Monday to Friday and on weekends is local, picking up kids, shopping, sport, etc. They found it absolutely ideal, significantly cheaper to run, plug it in overnight, off-peak pricing, or plug it in during the day and charging from solar, either way saving heaps of money. They bought it because they thought it was the right thing to do, and they're now finding that they use it for almost all their driving. So what's available in Australia? There are a lot more available overseas than in Australia. These are some of the main ones. So at the more, broadly speaking, price is linked to the range, battery size and range. So for example, at the more economical end, we have, say, the Hyundai Kona, Hyundai Ioniq. The Ioniq's around kind of low to mid 50s, which is around 300 kilometres of range. Ioniq around mid 60s, gives you around 400 kilometres of range. And then escalating up the pricing ladder up to, say, Teslas, where you're getting, say, around 500 plus kilometres of range, but then you're paying 150,000 plus for it. One of the main issues with any of the cars on that pricing table is that they're all brand new. Now, some people don't want to buy a brand new car for ethical, environmental reasons, others for economic reasons, or both. And what we particularly wanted to do at Zero Emissions was open up EV ownership for more people. So absolutely delighted to be liaising with the Good Car Company, because their current sole focus is increasing EV ownership by giving people more affordable options. David Can from the Adelaide EV Association loves EVs. He's a multiple EV owner. He says, I've owned 3 EVs, first a second-hand Nissan Leaf. He bought it as a shopping runabout and literally never used his petrol car again. Then he wanted a longer range EV, so he bought a new Hyundai Ioniq. Done over 20,000 kilometres, had it annual services, and he says it's never had a spanner on it in terms of no parts, no replacements, nothing going wrong. And then same with his Tesla Model 3, done over 10,000 kilometres and hasn't needed any servicing or repairs. David's quick to point out these cars are shared by the family as well. He hasn't just got 3 of them sitting there for him. But yeah, he absolutely loves EVs for performance, maintenance, etc. Well, that's it from me. And while I am happy to take questions on my part, Anton will expand on what I've said, go into a lot more detail, and is also the expert. So I'll basically hand over to Anton. We'll hear from Anton, and then please ask any and all questions. I'm happy to answer them, and Anton is even better placed to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ursula, and hello everybody for coming out on, well, didn't actually have to come out, but thank you for attending here on a lovely Wednesday evening. I'm just going to share a screen, do a presentation, and yeah, totally happy to run through questions that have been collected in the chat, or whatever gets thrown up at the end. I am an EV expert. There are other EV experts out there as well. So there's an organisation called the Australian Electric Vehicle Association, and it's a members-based group, which has got lots of fact sheets and information. So if you're looking for a reputable third-party source, and there's also the Electric Vehicle Council, which is kind of an industry body of EV manufacturers and supporters, which is another source of information as well. So I'm just going to share my screen and we will get into this. Okay, so my name's Anton, and with Anthony, who's in the green shirt in this image, and Sam with the beard, we started the Good Car Company a couple of years ago now, and we had the express aim of trying to make electric vehicles affordable and mainly that was about decarbonising transport. We all come from environmental backgrounds rather than car sales as a background, and it was definitely, we were trying to do something to address the climate emergency we're in. And we've got about a decade to reduce emissions in half. And that's just to meet our Paris obligations. It's not long, and it's a lot of emissions we've got to drop. And what is amazing is at the moment we've got renewables, which are sitting there ready to go, whether it's on your rooftop or in solar or wind farms or what have you, or pumped hydro storage or battery storage. That technology is sitting there ready to go. And electric vehicles are there ready to scale right now. So those two things can get us almost halfway in the next decade. It's quite amazing that we've managed to have those bits ready to go. Things like solving concrete, landscape emissions, they're much harder cookies to cut, whereas renewables and EVs are remarkably simple swap outs. And that's what attracted us to that area. There was a recent survey of potential EV owners, and it showed that about half of the people who wanted to buy an EV didn't want to spend more than $30,000 on them. And that leaves them in a pickle because, as you can see from Ursula's side, there's no new EVs in that sort of price range. Traditionally, the approach has been is you wait for a second-hand market. Well, there's no new EVs coming in, so there's no second-hand market to produce affordable vehicles. The next approach we've been waiting for is governments to lead the way by purchasing electric vehicles for their fleets. And then in 2 years' time, they become available in the second-hand vehicle market. No governments in Australia have meaningfully purchased EVs for their fleets, even though they're existing, they're ready to go. I think South Australia and the ACT are going to be the first to jump in that direction at the moment. So we've had to look around the world and basically find where we can find secondhand electric vehicles to create a secondhand EV market from scratch. And our research led us to the New Zealand example. So in New Zealand, they've had much more easier and simpler and more relaxed rules on importing cars from other jurisdictions. And in New Zealand, there's about 15,000 Nissan Leafs zipping around on the roads there, which weren't sold by car dealers in New Zealand. Instead, they were imported from Japan. There were around 400,000 Nissan Leafs manufactured to this date, and about 100,000 of those are in Japan or were sold into the Japanese market. They drive on the same side of the road as us. And from introducing them into the New Zealand car market, a lot of the troubleshooting and issues that might have arisen with electric vehicles have been solved through that process. So there's great tools for analysing the state of the battery health, which is a key criteria. There's great tools for converting language to make it present as an English manufactured car, so it's not reading in Japanese, for example. There's great processes for chargers, firmware updates, and even we can now replace the battery packs on cars as an aftermarket service rather than relying on Nissan to be able to do that. That problem has been solved from the New Zealand jurisdiction, as well as in some other places around the world as well. So we've set out to create a second-hand car market from scratch. And what we've also done is tapped into our community and your community as well. So this image shows us with 24 of our first customers. This is a community bulk buy we ran in December last year, and then delivered cars through the beginning of the COVID lockdown, which made it all a bit more interesting. Learned a lot of what happens with supply chains in that period. And we also made a lot of great friends through that process. And the bulk buy activity has a few awesome benefits. And one of them is we get to talk directly to people like yourselves. What's also great about it is it changes the narrative. So each one of you will talk to your friends, your colleagues at work, and other people you meet around the place, your relatives and so forth. When a local council hears that there's now 50 EVs and you start bringing them wanting a charger to plug them into, they start working on that infrastructure. The electricity utilities start paying a lot more attention and making sure that they've got some forward planning to work out how EVs are going to go into the network. And when Matt Keane needs to make an announcement about EVs and how they're going to be deployed and how they're going to promote them, they've got a case study to say, hey, North Sydney is doing a great job on this. How can we move this forward as well? So there's a lot of policy and advocacy benefits from doing a bulk buy, which I think is really, really important. We also do save a little bit of money on the actual purchases, but those other items I think are much more valuable than saving some pennies on a car. And that comes from an advocacy background. This is Rosie, and she's our #1 customer. Indeed, she was our first customer, so that's why she gets to be called our #1 customer. And she and her family bought an EV from an ethical background. They were wanting to save climate for themselves and their children and so forth. Now, I think this is a market which hasn't been approached by traditional auto manufacturers. I don't think they've been thinking about a safe climate when they've been selling cars. This is something different about electric vehicles, and I love to see this get tapped into more meaningfully. Before I zoom on, what's interesting is she's really come to actually enjoy having a car and has turned into kind of a car person out of this. We've been having conversations in the past, and Ursula, last time we were on here, was talking about drag races she saw on Fight for Planet A. people who you wouldn't think would get engaged in this space start getting engaged, which is quite interesting. She likes the seat warmers, which works for a Hobart environment. Jeremy is probably the other main type of customer we see, and he's much more focused on the tech story, wanting a car of the future, something he wants to know what's happening under the bonnet, and is liking how electric vehicles are just better from a technical perspective. So they change gears. Well, they don't change gears. It's just smooth from 0 to 100. There's no interruption in between. Even with an automatic petrol car, it goes while it's changing gears. Here, there's just none of that happening. So from a driving experience and from a technical perspective, that's what he's really, really enjoying. This is Ashi and her partner, Mike, and she provided some great feedback on the processes on our first bulk buy and was very happy on the transparency that we provided. And it's something we're really keen on providing you, is telling you about the cars, warts and all. There's some things which are great about electric cars, there's some things which aren't so great, and you may as well know them because you'll work it out before too long. So we try and be very transparent in our process. And having bought cars before and houses and all of that, she thought this was the best experience of any purchase of any actual substantial size she'd had in her life. So I'm pretty happy with that. So we've got a few different models of cars available, and we're looking to bring in more cars, but these are the ones, more different models, but these are the ones we've got available at the moment. So this is base model Nissan Leaf. This shape of car were made between 2011 and 2017 in this shape, but they came in different battery capacities. So there's a 24 kilowatt hour, which gives you about 120 kilometers of driving, and a 30 kilowatt hour, which gives you around 160 kilometers of driving. They have a boot. It's quite roomy inside. They're a bit of a TARDIS of a vehicle in terms of the space inside, and we encourage people to go for a test drive and get inside one. We can fit tow racks on the back, so for carrying bikes if people are into those sort of outdoor activities. Interestingly, if you put bikes or canoes and that sort of thing on the roof, there's a lot of windage, and it can reduce the mileage by about 20% on the vehicle just by putting those things on your roof. Putting them on the back of the car reduces it down to like 3 to 5%, so almost negligible. So if people are into having that extra functionality, that's the way to approach it. We also have, oh, somebody's watering in the garden. I just got surprised. We've also got a newer build of Nissan Leaf. So these started being manufactured in 2017. These are the type you can buy at the Nissan dealership down the road now. So you could go down there and buy one like this now. So if you want a car now and you're prepared, please go ahead. They come in 2 battery sizes. So there's a 40 kilowatt hour, which gives around 240 kilometers of driving. And we have a model which you can't actually buy in Australia, which is a 62 kilowatt hour battery. So that gives you about 350 kilometers of driving. Interestingly enough, this vehicle and the previous one are pretty much the same dimensions. So if you park them side by side, they almost look identical. When you take them apart, they look completely different. The internal dimensions are very similar. Some of the internal appointment is different, and the newer model's got some fancier trim and fancier like heads-up display, the headsets, that sort of thing. Once again, there's roomy seats. I'm 6'5". Might not be able to tell over Zoom, and I can sit in the front seat of the car without hitting my head on the roof. So the back seat, I have to tip my head. So in terms of the roominess, it's quite a spacious vehicle. We also do a little, it's called an ENB 200. It's a caddy van equivalent. So it can fit a pallet in the back as a light commercial vehicle, or it can be configured as a 7-seater people mover car. So that's another option out there, which can fit some different usage scenarios. So not everybody's wanting a sedan, not everyone wants a van, not everybody wants an SUV, not everybody wants a ute. We're slowly building out the type of models that fit all the different usage scenarios. And will be built out. When they become available, we'll present them. So why we think we are the Good Car Company, apart from calling ourselves that name, is we've got models which we can't get from other dealerships in Australia, the vans and the 62 kilowatt hour Leafs. We can save money on a like-for-like purchase. We do the leading second-hand warranties for battery and for mechanical warranties. And we also have a 30-day return policy. So if you go and get a car from us and it doesn't actually fit your lifestyle, which is a real thing, it might not be